Marvel Select action figure review, and this time I'll be taking a look at the Super Skrull. The release of this action figure has clearly been timed to coincide with the release of the Disney Plus TV show, which is loosely based on the comic book event from Brian Michael Bendis a good few years ago, and for many, that comic book event was the pinnacle of his entire run on the Avengers. And during that event, the Super Skrull of course played a very significant part. And finally, we have him in the 7-inch scale. As you would expect for a Marvel Select figure, he does come in this oversized packaging. The packaging itself is pretty fun, it's bright, it's colourful, and it uses that collage effect of different images taken directly from comic books in the background. And in the centre of the plastic blister, we can of course see the action figure on display. Now, as much as I love this oversized packaging, it does tend to work better on those very large figures or figures that have lots and lots and lots of accessories, because otherwise you're left with a figure like this where it seems to be swimming in an awful lot of space and it just looks a little bit strange. But other than that, the presentation is still very nice and very displayable. Now if we flip it and look at the side panel, we can see that Diamond Select Toys have opted to take a photograph of the figure and place this on the side here. I really like this creative use of space. I think it's always worked really, really well for this line. I like stacking them up on my shelf on their side like this, so this looks really fun and quite colourful. The only issue I take with Diamond Select in their approach is that they're very inconsistent. Sometimes they take a photo, as in this case, and other times they use an image taken directly from a comic book or an artist's work, and this does make for a slightly incongruous look in your collection. You might also notice that this side panel is a slimmed down version of what we'd normally get. This is usually much thicker and wider on these figures. However, I'm a big fan of when they actually do this and trim it down. I do need to save some shelf space, and this is a really helpful way of doing that, and it still looks pretty good and consistent in the collection, so I have no issues with this whatsoever. Meanwhile, if we take a look at the back of the packaging, again, we have some photos of the figure here. We have a small inset photo revealing the alternate head and what that looks like, and a little bit of bio underneath that there. Otherwise, in the background, we have that collage of various covers featuring the Super Skrull from Secret Invasion. Again, this is very colourful. I really like the choice of purple on this packaging. It looks really bright and colourful and very displayable, and I think this looks really, really nice. So let's crack him open and see how he performs outside of the packaging. And first impressions are, this looks really nice. This seems like a really nicely presented, nicely painted figure that looks colourful and bright and pretty authentic to what we see on the page. I really like this head sculpt. This is definitely a nice strong Super Skrull, or any Skrull really, portrait. I think this is very nicely painted. We can see a number of different washes running through this. It gives it a lot more texture and depth, which I think is really good. And I also like his shoulder piece here and his collar. This is nicely painted. That gold paint is quite bright and metallic looking, catches the light just nicely. And likewise, the rest of the body is very nicely sculpted. This looks like all brand new pieces to me. I could be mistaken, but I don't think I've seen any of these pieces before on a Marvel Select release, so this is new and unique, which looks really nice, and again, very nicely painted. I really love the gold on the gauntlets, on the shoulders, and on those fins on the back. I really like how they've got the gold emblem on the centre of his belt there as well, with the red painted around it. Again, very neatly applied. It looks really sharp, and I think they've done a very, very nice job of this. Now, there's no washes running through the main black body piece underneath, but I don't think it needs it in this case. I think it looks really striking like this, and the colours work really, really well together. Likewise, if we flip him around and we look at the back there, we can see those wings, because of course he is emulating Black Bolt, but this looks really nice. I think they've done a very good job with this. It just looks very neat and very perfectly painted and aligned. So yeah, it looks really, really good, very, very striking visually. When it comes to the boots and legs, there's really not an awful lot to comment on here. It's just that matte plastic with some silver trims, but this looks really good. Again, I'm pretty sure this is a brand new piece. I don't think I've seen this before, so this looks pretty nice and a little bit different in the collection. Articulation wise, there is a ball joint at the top of the head. Now he can move his head from side to side easily enough, but there is some restrictions when it comes to that collar, so he can't get it all the way around. Then he can't really wobble it side to side either, sadly. But he can move his head forward a pretty good distance. He would be able to move it back more, but again, that collar is going to be very, very restrictive here. Now he's got ball joints in the shoulders, but they only seem to go up and down a little bit. There's not a huge range of motion here, but it's enough, I suppose. There is a complementary bicep swivel, which is helpful, and then sadly they have opted for this pin swivel at the elbow rather than having a double joint here, which is, yeah, very disappointing and a shame, really. So he can only arc his arm to about 90 degrees, but he does have a pin swivel at the wrists, where that wrist can rotate all the way around and will hinge forwards and backwards just about. Now, just in case you're wondering, those fins at the back will move with the shoulder blades, so there's no problems here when it comes to moving the arms out, which is great. Now, there is another ball joint in the upper torso, so he can move side to side, but it won't really let him wiggle left and right, and it won't let him bend forwards and backwards. There's more ball joints in the hips, so the legs will kick out all the way to the side there. There is a complementary thigh swivel at the very top, which is nice to see, and then another pin swivel at the lower leg. Now, I don't mind this so much because you can get a bit more articulation out of it. You see, the leg will kick forwards or kick backwards, and then that lower pin swivel will still hinge to about 90 degrees, so this isn't too bad when it comes to the legs. Now, there is a hinge at the ankle allowing the foot to move forwards and backwards, but there's also a rocker there as well that lets it move from side to side. In terms of accessories, he does come with quite a few. He has an additional 3 pairs of hands, which is almost excessive, but he does come with an alternate screaming black bolt head, which I think is really cool, and a scream effect as well. So this is kind of interesting how they've gone for this approach. I think this is nice that they're giving all these different extras here, but I'm slightly disappointed that they didn't give him a base. I think I would much rather have lost an extra pair of hands and instead had a really cool display base to put him on. Okay, so the alternate black bolt head is pretty cool. I think they've done a nice job with the sculpt of this. Again, I like the detailing of the teeth and the tongue. I think this looks pretty cool, and it's pretty reflective of what we see in the comic book. So I think this is nicely done. Where I do take issue is with the attempt to give him that scream effect. Whilst I do commend them and praise them for trying to do something a little bit different, I've not seen this kind of effect done before, it doesn't really work. As you can see, the mechanism to attach this to the head is just purely by screwing it into his mouth. There's no holes, there's no pin, there's no slots, so it just looks like he's biting down on something, and it just doesn't look very good. Especially if we view it from the front, where it just looks like a big plastic dish obscuring the figure. And I appreciate it looks much better from a side angle, but nevertheless, even then, it doesn't look fantastic. Now, as a quick scale comparison, here he is standing next to the most recent released Marvel Select Hulk. You'll see, obviously, there's a huge differential between their heights and width and just general mass. This seems to be pretty appropriate. In my mind, the Super Skrull was always slightly bigger and taller. Now, I might be wrong, and obviously it is open to artistic license, but he still seems to be a little bit on the small side. So here he is next to the 6-inch scale Marvel Legends Spider-Man that I have, and as you can see, he is a lot bigger here. Now, obviously the Super Skrull is meant to be imitating Black Bolt, so I suppose he should be smaller anyway, but to me this just looks better. I actually like how he scales with the Marvel Legends 6-inch figures more so than the 7-inch Marvel Select ones. Okay then, so in terms of final thoughts, for me, I'm going to have to give this 2 stars. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like this figure. I think they've done a really nice job with the sculpting and the paint taps, as you would expect from a Marvel Select figure. Overall, its look is very nice. It's a nice addition to the collection, but there are some glaring issues that I have with this. First of all, I'm not super impressed with the articulation on this figure. Now, to be fair, I know that Marvel Select aren't really known for their articulation, but they have made tremendous strides in recent years, so this is a little bit disappointing to see this sort of retrograde step being introduced here, particularly with the pins in the arms. That's really disappointing. It would have been nice to have had just a double joint there to make sure that we could have got that arm all the way back. Likewise, the joint in the upper torso, great for moving from side to side, but it doesn't let you lean left and right, and it doesn't let you bend the figure forwards and backwards either, so it's very stationary and static, which is really a shame. And then I have to factor in the accessories. It's great that he comes with all those extra hands. I'm not entirely sure he warrants that many different hands, to be honest, but okay, fine, it's nice that we have them. I don't feel that the scream effect really works, but I do appreciate they're trying to do something different, which is nice. The alternate head is a good choice, so I'm pleased that they've thrown that in, but I'm really disappointed that we don't have a base, and it seems that Marvel Select have moved away from offering bases at all anymore, and that's very sad because it used to be one of those things that was synonymous with the brand. Having a nice display set, a nice display base to put your figure on, made the Marvel Select figures really fun and is part of their charm. It's really sad to see that disappear. And smaller scale figures like this one tend to feel like they're missing something without it. It's like there's something missing in the packaging, and you can see that by looking at the packaging where the figure's just kind of swimming in all that space, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the video. So all in all, not a bad figure by any stretch of the imagination. It's nice to have the Super Skrull in the 7-inch scale in the Marvel Select line at long last, but it's not the greatest figure. And again, we've seen massive price hikes at the price point for these figures, and I'm not sure whether this one really justifies it when we see those much bigger oversized figures from this very same line at the same price point. If you enjoyed this video, please do give it a like, and remember to subscribe as there'll be plenty more videos soon.